As a boy, he was always different. No one understood him.
You ready for it, boy? It's time to take your medicine. Thank you, sir.
No one could control him.
Go inside, honey.
But now, it's a new beginning. The beginning of the end for Freddy.
Every town has an Elm Street. No! Screaming while the bus is in motion!
It's your mind or go for it.
I'll get you, my pretty, and your little soul, too!
We're gonna have to hit him with everything we got.
Now I'm playing with power!
We're in Twin Peaks here.
It's gotta be me and him.
You want to live?
Hey, what's up? What's with kids today, huh?
Freddy's Dead. The final nightmare.
Great graphics.
They saved the best for last.
Hey YouTubers, Hankster here, and welcome to another edition of our Nightmare on Elm Street movie review series. And we're going right into the 6th edition, which of course is not really entitled Nightmare on Elm Street. It's called Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare. And all intents and purposes, this is basically the last official Nightmare on Elm Street movie that was going by the plot line or the storyline, the original version of Nightmare on Elm Street in the sense of what started in 1984. The remaining Freddy tie-in movies, you had one that was kind of takes place in the real world, and you had one which was more so a crossover movie between Nightmare on Elm Street and Friday the 13th, and then he of course had the reboot in 2010. So, but part 6, or this particular one, is basically the last official Nightmare on Elm Street movie tie-in with Robert Englund as Freddy Krueger. But there's still more to come in this movie marathon, so don't worry about that. Well, basically, Freddy Krueger has run amok. Even though he had been apparently defeated by Alice in the last movie, Freddy Krueger has done his rounds again and has basically wiped out pretty much all of the teenagers in Springwood and turning their parents into a bunch of basket cases. There was only one teenager left, and he sought after to try to escape Springwood, even by airplane, but Freddy Krueger was still not through with him yet. He, of course, wasn't going to kill him just yet. He sent him off on a mission to find someone that would help him spread Freddy's influence all across the planet. Who would see that? The young man, of course, inappropriately gets a case of amnesia and winds up in a young person's home where a young therapist is there with her crew, and which includes and her, of course, her own patients, including, of course, a person with hearing problems, a girl who has been sexually molested, and sort of a video game freak, a druggy video game freak type person. When they try to take the young man back to Springwood, try to reclaim his memories, he starts to put pieces together, even though it's not the correct way, and he begins to believe that maybe he is the mysterious child of Freddy Krueger. They discover that Freddy Krueger himself had a child, and of course didn't bring any harm to that particular child, even though the whereabouts of that child went into limbo after Freddy Krueger's apparent demise in the hands of the Elm Street parents so many years ago. Of course, when Freddy Krueger meets up with that young man again, he, of course, tells him that he didn't have a son, he had a daughter. And, of course, we estimate that, of course, that was the young therapist that is, of course, Freddy's long-lost daughter. And, of course, thanks to the young man, not only has he found his daughter, but he is going to use her as a vessel to try to go across the planet to bring in more victims and make him even more powerful. And it's up, of course, it's also up to her to stop him from doing so. Now, this movie, of course, being as it was a sort of send-off for Freddy, in a sense, for this particular movie, they kind of went all the way in trying to make this one of the biggest Nightmare on Elm Street movies there was. They had big celebrities at the time that could do this, including, of course, rocker Alice Cooper, who, ironically enough, a couple years earlier had did a song for one of the Friday the 13th movies. Of course, that was the song "Man Behind the Mask." So that was interesting that he not only did something for Friday the 13th, but he also did something for Nightmare on Elm Street. He, of course, played Freddy's foster father or something, who, of course, liked to beat him. Also, Roseanne Barr and her husband at the time, Tom Arnold, made an appearance in this movie as a goofy couple trying to kidnap children and try to regain their family after what Freddy Krueger did to their family. And, of course, yes, that's right, Johnny Depp makes his return to the Nightmare on Elm Street series. Of course, if you remember, he, of course, played Nancy's boyfriend in the original Nightmare on Elm Street back in 1984. But he did make a brief return, sort of a stab at the popular "This Is Your Brain on Drugs" commercial. Of course, at this time, he was slowly becoming the big movie star that he is today. He, of course, at the time, I think around this time, he was still doing 21 Jump Street. He was also doing a lot of other movies, like I think Crybaby as well. Of course, this was still many years before he would do the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, and of course, also started before he even started starring in movies with Tim Burton, but involving Tim Burton and all. But it was good to see Johnny back there. Now, of course, the major gimmick of this movie was that it was in 3D. Not the whole movie was in 3D. It was just the certain parts of the movie, the battle scenes, let's see. Let's put you this way. And when I say 3D, it's not the current thing of 3D. Like, the whole movie would be filmed in 3D. You just put on the glasses, you watch the whole movie, and you get to see this close-up experience of what the scenery and all this kind of stuff. No, this is more the dorky, in-your-face, classic 3D that was getting a revival back then in the late 1980s. Most of the look-through horror movies of Friday the 13th also did this, where they would just stick things in your face, and it was just more like in your face type. It's in 3D, woo, and it's basically still the cheap paper 3D glasses with the one side green, one side red lenses and everything. So, but at the time it was not bad. They even tell you when you can put on the glasses to see the effects in the movie. Basically, trying to say that these are just 3D glasses. Well, in the dream world, these had special powers and stuff, and it would help you defeat Freddy. Even though all it was just to give you the 3D effects. Well, it was just basically a certain part of the movie. They basically told you when to wear these glasses. It was not like these days, which was bring a better effect to the already good special effects you already had. This was basically a cheap gimmick like they did back in the 1950s when they originally had the 3D movies and all. But it was still a pretty good gimmick out there and all. All in all, this was still a pretty good send-off for Freddy. Of course, this wasn't going to be the last time we would see Freddy, as even Robert Englund. This was not going to be the last we see of him as Freddy Krueger. We at least see him 2 more times as the infamous Dream Killer. In that, but I hope you enjoyed this review, and of course we'll be going into the 90s with Freddy Krueger with the new Nightmare, which takes an interesting turn for the Nightmare on Elm Street movie series. And stay tuned here for more reviews and whatnot here on the Motoyverse. See ya.